Imagine being so rich that your generosity accidentally changed the economy of an entire region. Imagine giving away so much gold that its value fell for years afterward. That isn't legend, it's history. His name was Mansa Musa, ruler of the Mali Empire, an empire overflowing with gold, so much gold that travelers struggled to describe it. Kings admired him, merchants followed him, scholars welcomed him. Entire cities stopped to watch him arrive. His caravan stretched beyond the horizon. Thousands of people traveled beside him. Hundreds of camels carried gold, not silver, not spices, gold, enough to leave historians speechless centuries later. But unbelievable wealth was only part of his story, because behind the riches stood one of the greatest empires Africa had ever known. This is the story of a king whose fortune became legend, whose journey amazed the world, and whose legacy still shines today. This is the richest man who has ever lived. Long before Europe discovered unimaginable wealth, West Africa was already home to one of Earth's greatest empires. Its name was Mali, a kingdom built on trade, knowledge, and rivers of gold. Its merchants crossed deserts few dared to enter. Its cities welcomed travelers from distant continents. Its scholars preserved knowledge beneath towering mosques. This was no forgotten land. It was a global power. In this extraordinary empire, a young prince was born. His name was Musa. No one yet imagined the legend he would become. As a child, he watched caravans disappear beyond the horizon. He listened to merchants speak of distant kingdoms. He learned that wealth could build civilizations. But wisdom was even more valuable. Royal tutors prepared him for leadership. Military commanders taught strategy. Religious scholars taught humility. Every lesson shaped the future emperor. Years passed. The prince became a man. The empire grew richer. Trade expanded farther than ever before. Then, history suddenly changed course. The throne became vacant. The empire needed a new ruler. Every eye turned toward Musa. The young prince stepped forward, not knowing that he would soon become the richest human history has ever recorded. Power does not begin with kings. It begins with resources. And beneath the soil of West Africa lay one of history's greatest treasures, gold, not a little gold, an extraordinary abundance of it. For centuries, miners uncovered precious metals from the earth, village by village, river by river. The wealth of an empire slowly emerged from the ground. But gold alone creates no empire. Someone must move it. Someone must protect it. Someone must trade it. That is where Mali became unstoppable. Its caravans crossed the Sahara year after year, linking West Africa with North Africa and beyond. Salt traveled south. Gold traveled north. Ideas traveled in every direction. Merchants carried more than merchandise. They carried cultures, languages, science, faith. Every caravan strengthened Mali's influence. Every successful journey enriched the empire. Taxes flowed into the royal treasury. Markets expanded. Cities flourished. Mosques rose toward the sky. Libraries filled with knowledge. Scholars arrived from distant lands. The world knew Mali was prosperous, but few understood just how wealthy it had become. Soon, the entire world would find out. Then, in 1324, Mansa Musa made a decision. He would journey to Mecca. For a Muslim ruler, the pilgrimage was an act of faith. But Musa would not travel unnoticed. Preparations began across the empire. Supplies were gathered, camels were loaded, officials prepared for months away from home, and gold was brought from the royal treasury, an extraordinary amount of gold. Medieval accounts describe an enormous procession. Thousands reportedly accompanied the emperor. Officials, soldiers, merchants, servants, and attendants, and long lines of heavily loaded camels. The Sahara stretched before them, beautiful from a distance, merciless from within. Day after day, they crossed the sand. Heat hammered the caravan from above. Sand swallowed the horizon below. At night, temperatures fell. The stars became their ceiling, and the caravan kept moving, mile after mile, week after week, until something appeared beyond the desert. Cairo, one of the medieval world's great cities. Its markets connected continents. Its streets overflowed with commerce. Its rulers were accustomed to receiving powerful visitors. But Musa's arrival was different. The caravan seemed to keep coming and coming and coming. Then Cairo saw the gold that Musa spent generously during his stay. He distributed gold through gifts and spending. Gold entered Cairo's economy in unusual quantities. Contemporary accounts remembered the spectacle. Later, chroniclers preserved the story, and the economic consequences became legendary. Gold became more abundant. Its purchasing power reportedly weakened. The effects were remembered for years. Musa had revealed Mali's wealth to the wider world. And his journey still wasn't finished. Mecca remained ahead. So, the caravan returned to the road, across Egypt, toward the Red Sea, across another unforgiving landscape, until the holy city finally appeared. Here, wealth became secondary. Musa had come as a pilgrim. Before God, the emperor joined the faithful. Power gave way to devotion. But Musa was also watching. He encountered scholars and intellectual traditions. He saw magnificent architecture. He encountered ideas from distant civilizations. And he would carry some of that inspiration home. The pilgrimage had begun as an act of faith. It became something much larger. A diplomatic spectacle, an economic event, and an announcement to the medieval world. Mali was not hidden. Mali was powerful. Mali was connected. And its emperor was impossible to ignore. Mansa Musa was returning home as a legend. Mansa Musa had shown the world his wealth. Now he had to decide what that wealth was for. The road home stretched westward. Across deserts he had already conquered once. But Musa was returning with more than memories. He returned with new connections, new influences, and new ambitions for Mali. The emperor had seen great cities. He had encountered remarkable architecture. He had spoken with learned men. He had seen what knowledge could build. And now he was coming home. News of his return traveled ahead of him. Mali prepared to receive its emperor. But Musa's greatest display was no longer a caravan. It would be what he built. Mosques rose, communities expanded, trade centers grew richer, and scholarship gained royal support. Among the cities transformed under his rule, one name would become legendary: Timbuktu. Today, the name sounds almost mythical, but this was a real city. A city positioned near powerful trade routes. Gold passed through its markets. Salt arrived from the Sahara. Books arrived too. And sometimes, knowledge could be extraordinarily valuable. Manuscripts were copied by hand, preserved carefully, bought, sold, studied, and carried across enormous distances. Works of religion filled collections. So did law. Mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, language and literature as well. Mali's wealth was acquiring another form: knowledge. Scholars traveled toward Mali. Students gathered around teachers. Debates continued beneath shaded courtyards. Scribes worked by lamplight. Libraries accumulated manuscripts. Mosques became centers of intellectual life. Musa also commissioned monumental architecture. The Djinn Gireba Mosque became one enduring symbol. Earth, timber, human skill. Together they created something monumental. Architecture became a statement. Mali possessed more than treasure. It possessed civilization at extraordinary scale. Gold can purchase almost anything, but gold can disappear. It can be spent, stolen, buried, or forgotten. Knowledge behaves differently. Teach one person, and they can teach another. Build one school, and generations can pass through it. Preserve one manuscript, and a voice can survive centuries. Perhaps this was Musa's greater fortune. He possessed gold, but helped build something gold could not replace. By now, Musa's name had traveled far beyond Mali. Stories of his wealth crossed the Sahara. They reached Egypt, North Africa, and eventually Europe. To people who had never seen Mali, Musa seemed almost impossible. A king from beyond the Sahara, ruling an empire of extraordinary wealth. Then, mapmakers began remembering his name. In 1375, the Catalan atlas depicted him, seated upon a throne, crowned in gold, holding a golden object in his hand. Mali had entered Europe's geographic imagination, but there was something Musa could never purchase: more time. Years passed. The emperor grew older. The face that had crossed the Sahara changed. The hands that commanded treasure aged. But the responsibilities of the empire remained. Petitions still arrived. Merchants still crossed his roads. Scholars still gathered in Mali's cities. Caravans still disappeared into the Sahara. Life continued around the emperor until his own story approached its final page. The exact details remain uncertain, but Musa's reign eventually ended. And suddenly, the throne needed another ruler. The man was gone, but the empire remained. Its markets still opened each morning. Its mosques still filled with worshippers. Its teachers still opened their manuscripts. Its merchants still weighed gold. Yet no ruler governs forever. Musa's successors inherited enormous power. They also inherited enormous responsibility. Keeping an empire together is harder than conquering one. Borders must be defended, trade routes protected, rivals managed, and distant provinces kept loyal. For a time, Mali remained formidable. Its cities continued to matter. Its trade continued to generate wealth. But history never stands still. Political struggles weakened royal authority. Power shifted between competing forces. Territories became harder to control. New powers rose across West Africa. Trade networks changed, and Mali's dominance gradually diminished. The empire did not vanish in a single night. Great civilizations rarely do. They change, they fragment, and eventually another age begins. And this leaves one irresistible question. What happened to Musa's fortune? There is no hidden vault containing his billions. No bank account records his final balance. No historian can calculate his exact net worth. Modern estimates are speculative, because Musa's wealth was not a modern salary. It was control over resources, land, trade, taxation, and access to immense quantities of gold. His true fortune cannot be reduced to one number, but his impact can still be seen, because the greatest thing Musa left behind was not gold. So, was Mansa Musa truly the richest man who ever lived? The answer is more complicated than the legend. You may have seen enormous numbers attached to his name. hundreds of billions of modern dollars. But there is a problem. No medieval accountant calculated Musa's net worth. There was no modern stock portfolio, no corporate valuation, no bank statements waiting to be discovered. Musa's wealth existed in a different world, a world where rulers controlled territories, trade routes, tributes and taxation, and access to valuable resources, especially gold. So, converting his fortune into dollars is deeply uncertain. The economies are simply too different. But we do know something remarkable. Mali stood near the center of major gold-producing regions. Its rulers benefited from enormous commercial networks. Musa could mobilize resources on an imperial scale. His pilgrimage made that power visible, not through a modern wealth ranking, but through what eyewitnesses remembered: a vast procession, extraordinary quantities of gold, generous spending, and a reputation that crossed continents. That is why his wealth became legendary. But perhaps wealth is the wrong place to end his story, because gold was never Musa's only legacy. Gold changes hands, kingdoms change rulers, borders disappear, even empires eventually decline. But ideas can survive all of them. A manuscript can outlive a king. A building can remember an age. A story can cross 7 centuries. And Musa's story did exactly that. His image survived on a medieval European map. His pilgrimage survived in historical chronicles. The intellectual heritage of Timbuktu survived. And his name survived: Mansa Musa. Nearly 7 centuries have passed. The caravans are gone. The royal court is gone. The empire he ruled no longer exists. Yet people still speak his name in Africa, in Europe, across the Americas, across the world. Not because we know his bank balance. We don't. Not because every story about him can be proven. It cannot. We remember him because his reign became extraordinary and because the world noticed. Maybe Mansa Musa was history's richest individual. Maybe that question can never be answered precisely. But we can say something greater. He made Mali famous far beyond West Africa. He patronized architecture and learning. And centuries later, we are still telling his story. Perhaps that is the fortune no ruler can purchase. To build something that survives you. To leave a name that refuses to disappear. Gold made Mansa Musa famous, but history made him immortal. And 7 centuries later, the world is still looking west.